All right, y'all, welcome back to the channel and to a really interesting little 410 test I've got out here today. It's definitely one I've been wanting to try for a while, and there's not a whole lot out there shooting this type of ammunition through this type of a setup. So I'm definitely excited to see what kind of performance we actually get. It might be really good. It might be absolutely terrible as well. I don't know, because it could really go either way on this one. But for the ammunition I've got here today, I recently picked up a box of this stuff. This is the Hornady Critical Defense 410 Triple Defense shells. These are a 2.5-inch shell with a 41 caliber FTX slug and two 35 caliber round balls. And the box says 750 feet per second with 300 foot-pounds of muzzle energy, but these are kind of a handgun round, kind of meant to be fired through judge revolvers and things like that. So that's probably the number out of a handgun like that, but we've got a little bit different of a setup today, so we probably are going to see higher than that. And here's what those little shells look like. Just a 2.5-inch 410 shot shell, but if you can see there is that red tip FTX slug in there, so definitely a pretty interesting loading. And I do want to cut one of these open and see what they actually look like on the inside. So if you want to see me do that, stick around towards the end of the video and we'll cut one open and see what they look like inside. Now, as for the setup I've got, it's definitely something pretty interesting. I've brought out my Mossberg 500 410. Now, yes, this is the Turkey edition, but doesn't mean anything besides camouflage with changeable chokes. So we've got a shotgun to test these kind of handgun oriented defensive rounds through. Now, as for our choke here, I did contact Hornady through their customer service and ask them, are these rounds safe to fire through a shotgun? And if so, what kind of chokes can you use? What should you and shouldn't you try and run them through? That kind of stuff. And they said, yes, you can shoot them through a shotgun, but stick to a cylinder bore choke. So for today's test, that's what we're going to do. We're going to stick to having a cylinder bore choke in the gun. So as for today's test, this is how I kind of want to do it. I want to start at really close range, like you would use a shotgun for defensive range down a hallway or something like that. I figured we'll start at 7 yards and take a shot on our target, and we'll see how they kind of pattern, where our slug goes, if it's stable, if our round balls are anywhere even close, that kind of stuff. And based on what we see there, we might move it into 5 yards. We might move it out to 10, 15, 25 yards. And potentially, if we are seeing some really just amazing results, we might move it out a little bit farther than that and see, maybe you might want to use that for foxes or coyotes or something. I don't know. We just have to test it and see where we're at, so we can figure out where we need to go. And of course, all of these shots will be through my chronograph, so we will be able to see what kind of velocities we're actually getting. Let's get you guys set up with a view of this target. We'll start at 7 yards, typical defensive range type of scenario, and we'll fire around and we'll see what we have, and we'll figure out from there where we want to go. So let's head over here to the target and get set up and see what we can actually get as for performance with these triple defense slug and round ball shells through a shotgun. All right, so let's take a look here at our grouping at 7 yards through that Mossberg 500 with a cylinder bore choke. As we can see here, we have a really nice and centered up hit. I circled the 3 impacts there. The larger splotch you see there cut in the paper is the little wad piece that's just stuck in the paper. But I believe the bottom hole there that I circled is the slug, and the other 2 are the round balls, I think. Either way, as you can see, 7 yards gave us 1 7/8 inch spread. So out of a shotgun, that is more than good enough for defensive range. So I'm definitely pretty happy with how that performed. Now, I think we should move it over to the top right spray paint mark there and back it up to 10 yards and see what kind of difference it makes. I think it's going to open up a little bit more, but we'll see. It might still really surprise us. Okay, so now let's take a look at our 10-yard group here, and as we can see, really not much difference at all. It gave us an 1/8 of an inch larger group. So 2 inches at 10 yards, still absolutely deadly. There's no doubt about it. So definitely looking like some good performance so far. So let's back it out 5 more yards this time, and we'll shoot a group at 15 yards down at that bottom left circle down there and see what it gives us there. I'm thinking it's still going to look pretty good, but let's back it out to 15 yards and see what it looks like. All right, so now let's look at our 15-yard group there, and that gave us a 4.5-inch spread. So we're starting to open up now, and I believe that bottom hole right down here is our slug, because I don't know if you can tell on camera, but it is slightly, and I mean very slightly, oblong. So maybe that slug isn't quite flying absolutely perfectly as straight as it could be, which is what I was concerned with, not having rifling to engage in that shotgun. But either way, 4.5 inches at 15 yards, still absolutely good enough, no doubt about it. So I'm saying now, let's, for the sake of it, back it out to 25 yards, and we'll shoot at that bottom right circle down there and see what it gives us. All right, so let's look at our 25-yard group now, and that's what we got. And surprisingly enough, it really didn't open up a whole lot. We went from 4.5 to 4 3/4 at 25 yards. That's not bad at all right there. It would absolutely do whatever you want it to do for defense or hunting small game or predators, absolutely. So after seeing these results here, even though it's kind of pointless, but maybe not for somebody who might want to hunt predators or something with it, let's just for the sake of doing it, back it out to 40 yards like we would a normal buckshot type of test. And we'll shoot at that middle dot, which will give us this entire paper to catch all 3 of those projectiles if we're even going to be on the paper. But I'm definitely curious to see what happens. Yes, it's a little bit longer range than a lot of people would ever use it for, but I don't know. It might really surprise us. So just for the sake of doing it, let's back it out to 40 yards and take one last shot here on this paper and see what it gives us. All right, so now let's look and see what we got at 40 yards here. And I gotta say, for what this load is, that's pretty impressive. So for our 40-yard spread, we had the ones here marked with the X's. So 2 up there, which I believe are the round balls, and the one right down in our 25-yard group right there marked with an X, which I believe is our slug, because as you can probably see there, it's not perfectly straight, and it does kind of look like it was flying a little bit keyhole on that one, which I wouldn't be surprised at that distance if that's true. So obviously that gave us an 11.25-inch spread at 40 yards. Now we were a little bit to the right, but still, that's not too bad at all for what that load is out of a shotgun, which it wasn't kind of technically designed for. So overall here, I am really quite impressed with how this load performed. Absolutely good enough for defensive purposes, and I'd call it good enough for hunting as well. Out to 40 yards, you could probably take a coyote with that, and potentially a fox as well. Definitely I'd say out at 25 yards and probably 30 as well. But overall, I'm definitely really impressed with what this was able to do for being the type of shell it is out of a shotgun like that. I can't complain too much about that kind of performance, I'd say. Okay, so let's look at our chrono real quick and see what we got. The box was claiming 750, but that was probably through a Judge revolver, and we definitely saw higher than that, which I'm not surprised. But let's go through and see what the numbers actually gave us. So for a high, we had 1262. For a low, we had 1188. That gave us an average of 1224 with an extreme spread of 74 and a standard deviation of 28. So definitely not too bad as far as velocity goes. You're going to be carrying plenty of energy with that slug and those 2 round balls. So definitely looking pretty good here, I'd say. Alright, so after seeing that, I'm definitely pretty happy with the performance, but I've got a few water jugs set up over here. So let's shoot around into those and see what kind of performance we actually have, how much energy dump we have, and maybe if we can catch that slug or not, we'll be able to see penetration and if it actually opened up or not. So let's go over here and shoot these water jugs and see what happens. All right, so that was definitely pretty impressive as far as energy dump goes. Our first jug here, absolutely destroyed, complete penetration. Everything went all the way through it. Our second jug down there, same exact story. Everything right straight on through it, completely blew out the jug. Now, as for our other jugs here, which are kind of jugs, I guess you could call it, but we had an entry hole right here in the front, which was probably our slug if I had to take a guess. But what we do see here is not a full pass-through. It dimpled the front edge of this domain jug here, but did not go all the way through. As we can see here, our other jug is down there, still full of water. Nothing went in there. Now, unfortunately, this jug here did not catch any of the projectiles. It probably bounced out of the top of the lid somewhere, and I have absolutely no idea where the projectile went. I did look for it, but there is absolutely nothing in here as far as projectile goes. Okay, I take that back. After cleaning up everything and moving the barrel and stuff like that, I actually did find 2 of the projectiles, and here they are. That's what they look like. We have the slug and one of the round balls. That round ball smushed out almost completely flat on the top, and you can see kind of a round-ish shape on the back. So definitely pretty interesting on that. You can see how flat that round ball got. And here's the slug projectile, and it looks like it has rifling on it, but that must be molded or cast into it because that is not a rifled shotgun or a rifled choke. But either way, it definitely hit pretty unstable or something. It either keyholed going in there, or it hit, did not expand, and immediately started tumbling. That's also another possibility because you can see how flattened both the front and the rear of that slug is. So that's definitely pretty interesting, I'd say. But it did not quite expand the way it was supposed to. Even at about, I don't know, 5 yards or so where I shot those jugs, did not expand the way it should have. Okay, here's one of those shells a little bit closer up, and we'll go ahead and cut it open so we can see what the insides look like. As you can see, there is that red slug down in there, and the round balls are underneath of it. But let me cut this open, and we'll see what it looks like on the inside. Okay, so after cutting the side of this shell open, here's what it looks like, and it's definitely pretty interesting. As you can see, we have the slug up front, and the 2 round balls are hidden down here in the center. One is in the wad, and one is half in the wad and half in the bottom of that slug. So if we slide this slug out here, you can kind of see, maybe here, there you go, you can see how that first round ball is half in the wad, and it would have been half in the bottom of that slug, and the bottom is hollow there. So that's what one of the slugs looks like before it got fired. And here's your round balls. We have one right here, and the second one is down in this wad. So I'll pull it open so you can get a better look. Okay, there we go. You can see the first little round ball right there, and the second one is still hiding down in here, and it's actually a little bit on the stuck side down in there. There it goes. So 2 perfectly round little lead balls. And there's the wad or shot cup, whatever you would choose to call it on this particular one. Definitely pretty interesting to see. But just out of curiosity, I do want to measure these round balls and the slug for you just so we can see the actual diameters of them. So our slug here comes out to be right at 4.16 for diameter. So maybe just the slightest little bit over bore diameter, which would make sense if they want to engage it in the rifling of something like a judge. So let's measure the round ball and see what that diameter actually is on that. Okay, so for our round ball here, let's see. Right at 3.32. The box claims 36 caliber round balls, I do believe. So I think they are a little bit undersized, or at least by my measurements anyway. Now they're not, perfectly, absolutely round necessarily. They do have little dimples in them here and there. So there's a little bit of leeway there, but not maybe exactly what the box is claiming anyway. But definitely pretty interesting to see this stuff overall here. All right, y'all. Well, what did you think about that performance there? Definitely pretty impressive. I mean, even the energy numbers, I still have water all over my glasses that I can't really wipe off because it'll just freeze on my glasses immediately with how cold it is. So definitely, I'm liking the performance that we got out here today. From a shotgun and a round that's kind of designed for a pistol, I don't really have any complaints. But as always, leave your thoughts about it in the comments. Is that about what you expected to see? Were you a little bit surprised? Either way. And if you've tested these through a shotgun, what has been your experience with them? Leave a comment. Let me know all that down below. But either way, I've got a bunch more testing to do, so I'm going to get back to it. As always, we have the channel Instagram as well as a mailbox where you can send things if you'd like. All that information will be in the description if you're interested. But I'm going to get back to it, so I'll see y'all in the next one.